I used to think the creepiest thing about my neighborhood was how quiet it got at night. No kids playing, no cars driving by, no barking dogs, just silence. At first, I thought it was a blessing. After living in the city for years, silence was what I craved. But silence has a way of amplifying things you'd rather not notice, like the house next door. When we moved into our place last summer, Sarah and I barely noticed the property beside us. It was a 2-story colonial, shutters faded, paint peeling in places. Not abandoned, not exactly, but unkempt. The kind of house you'd expect an elderly couple to occupy. The type who didn't care much about appearances anymore. But there was one thing I noticed almost immediately: the curtains. Every window in that house had the same heavy faded green curtains drawn shut. Front, back, upstairs, downstairs, always shut. I don't mean closed most of the time. I mean sealed, like they hadn't been touched in years. I only realized it because our kitchen sink faced their dining room window. Every morning as I rinsed coffee mugs, I'd glance over. Always the same. Green curtains, perfectly drawn. No sunlight ever escaped from them. At first it was just odd, something you file away in the back of your mind. But over time it began to gnaw at me because I never saw anyone, not once. No car pulling into the driveway. No lights flicking on. No movement behind the glass, nothing. We asked around the neighborhood. The responses were always vague. Oh, that place? Yeah, someone lives there, I think. Don't see 'em much. Strange folks keep to themselves, that was it. Nobody seemed to really know. Weeks went by. The curtains never moved. Then came the first night. It was late, close to 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep, so I wandered downstairs for water. Out of habit, I glanced out the kitchen window and froze. The curtains in the dining room window weren't just shut anymore. They were bulging, like something was pressed against them. For a split second, I could make out the outline of a face. Flattened features distorted through the fabric. A nose, a mouth, eye sockets. I dropped the glass in my hand. It shattered in the sink. When I looked again, the curtain was flat. Still, I told myself I imagined it. Lack of sleep, tricks of light. But I avoided the window the rest of the night. The next morning, the curtains were just as they'd always been. Perfect. Motionless. For a week, nothing happened. Then it escalated. I came downstairs again one night. This time, the face wasn't in the dining room window. It was in the upstairs bedroom window. Pressed hard enough against the curtain that I swore I saw the shape of its teeth. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. My first instinct was to wake Sarah, but something stopped me, because deep down I didn't want anyone else to see it. I didn't want it to be real. The following night, it happened again. Different window. The living room this time, always just for a moment, then gone. By the end of the month, it wasn't just faces. Sometimes it was hands. Long fingers splayed against the fabric, pushing outward as if trying to tear through. And then one night, the curtains moved. I was staring at the dining room window again. My nerves were shot by then. I checked every night like clockwork, and that night the curtain rippled. Not like wind, like something brushing against it from inside. Then slowly the fabric parted. Not much. Just an inch. Enough to see the darkness inside. Enough for something inside to see me. I swear I felt its gaze like cold fingers pressing into my chest. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. By the time I looked again, the curtain was shut. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but then Sarah said something that made my blood run cold. Do you ever feel like someone's watching us from that house? I stared at her. Why? I don't know, I keep catching myself glancing at those curtains, like something's behind them. I didn't tell her what I'd seen. I couldn't. That day I called the city records office, asked about the house. The woman on the phone pulled up the file. Let's see. Last owner of record was a Martha Dunn. Property taxes stopped being paid 5 years ago. Looks like foreclosure proceedings were started but never finalized. So no one lives there? Not according to our records. I hung up, hands trembling. That night I stared out the window for hours. The curtains never moved, but the following week things escalated again. We started hearing noises. At first it was faint, scraping sounds like furniture dragging across wood. Sometimes muffled thumps as if something heavy fell, always around 3 a.m. Then came the whispers, soft, indistinct, filtering through the walls. Not words I could make out, just Voices, Sarah heard them too. We stopped sleeping, finally one night. I snapped. I'm going over there, I told her. Don't you dare, she whispered. But I had to. I grabbed a flashlight, crossed the lawn, and stepped onto their porch. The wood sagged under my weight. I knocked, no answer. I tried the knob. It turned. The smell hit me first. Stale air, mildew, something rotten underneath it all. I swept my light across the living room. Dust, cobwebs, furniture draped in white sheets. And those curtains. From the inside, they were even more suffocating. Every window sealed tight, fabric yellowed with age. I crept deeper. The house felt wrong, too cold, too still. Upstairs, I found the bedroom. The one where I'd seen the face. The curtain there was bulging. Just slightly. I reached out. My fingers brushed the fabric. It was warm. Something pressed back. I screamed and stumbled away. The curtain rippled violently, like something thrashing against it from the other side. I bolted down the stairs, out the door, across the lawn, back into my house. Slammed the door, locked it, dragged a chair in front. Sarah was pale, shaking. What did you see? I couldn't answer. That night, neither of us slept. The next morning, I forced myself to look. The curtains were flat again. Perfect. Motionless. Like nothing had ever happened. We tried to live with it. Weeks passed. The noises continued. The whispers. The faces. Then came the final night. I woke to a sound. Not outside, inside, the scrape of fabric. I sat up, heart pounding, and saw it. The curtains in our bedroom drawn tight across our window. But we didn't have curtains like that. We had blinds. Sarah woke, saw them too. Her scream was the last thing I heard before the curtains bulged and something pressed through from the other side. You can tell a lot about a person by their garage. Some of my neighbors kept theirs immaculate. Rows of labeled bins, bikes hanging neatly on hooks, tools arranged like they belonged in a catalog. Others let theirs turn into catch-all storage spaces, piled high with junk that would never again see daylight. Then there was the house 3 doors down, the one with the man in the garage. I never learned his name. Nobody seemed to know it. He wasn't unfriendly, not exactly, he just wasn't present. I never saw him mowing the lawn, never saw him at the mailbox, never saw him carrying groceries. The only time anyone ever glimpsed him was late at night, when the garage door cracked open and the sounds began. At first, it was just hammering, sharp metallic bangs that echoed down the street at ungodly hours. Then came the sawing, long grating strokes, then the drilling, always past midnight, always going until nearly dawn. You'd think the neighbors would complain, but no one did. Nobody wanted to be the one to confront him. Nobody wanted to admit they were lying awake at 3 a.m. listening. Neither did I. Until curiosity got the better of me. It started small. I'd take out the trash around midnight, linger by the curb a little too long, pretending to check my phone. The sounds were unmistakable. Hammer, saw, drill. But what unnerved me wasn't just the noises. It was the rhythm. There was no hesitation, no mistakes. Every sound was methodical, deliberate, like someone following instructions. One night I caught a glimpse. The garage door was cracked open about a foot, spilling pale light onto the driveway. And through that sliver of space I saw movement. Not a person exactly, just a shadow. Long arms, hunched posture. The figure moved with slow precision, never pausing, never wavering. I should have looked away. Instead, I crouched down, trying to peer inside. And that's when it happened. The shadow froze. I swear it turned, like it knew I was there. I bolted back into my house and locked the door. For the next week, I avoided the garage completely. No late-night trash runs, no lingering outside. I convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing, until the smell started. At first, it was faint. Something sour, metallic. It drifted down the street when the garage door cracked open at night. Then it grew stronger. By the end of the week, it was unbearable. A mix of rot and chemicals that clung to the air long after sunrise. I wasn't the only one who noticed. At a neighborhood barbecue, the subject finally came up. "What is he building in there?" Someone muttered. No one answered. An older man across the table, Mr. Jacobs, cleared his throat. I asked him once. We all turned. "What did he say?" I asked. Jacobs looked uneasy. He just smiled. Said he was working on a project. Asked if I wanted to come see. "And did you?" Jacobs shook his head quickly. No, I didn't. The conversation died after that. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The noises, the smell, the project, and then came the scream. It was faint at first, a muffled, high-pitched sound buried under the hammering. But once I noticed it, I couldn't unhear it. It wasn't a tool. It wasn't machinery. It was a voice. I stayed up all night, ears straining, heart racing. The scream came again, louder, shorter this time, cut off abruptly like someone had clamped a hand over a mouth. The next morning, I was a wreck. My eyes were bloodshot, my hands shaking. I told myself I had to know. That night, I crept down the street, moving as quietly as possible. The garage door was open wider than usual, maybe 2 feet, enough for me to crouch low and see inside. What I saw made my stomach turn. Tables, dozens of them covered in tools. Not normal tools, rusted saws, serrated knives, clamps, chains. Things I didn't recognize. And in the center, under a single harsh light, was the man. His back was to me, hunched over something on the table. His arms moved with that same mechanical rhythm, and then I saw it. The arm, not his. Pale, limp, dangling off the edge of the table. I clapped a hand over my mouth, bile rising in my throat. The man paused. Slowly, his head turned, just enough for me to see his profile. His face was blank, no expression, just hollow eyes staring into nothing. I scrambled backward, tripping over my own feet. The garage door slammed shut with a metallic clang. The street went silent. I ran home and locked every door, every window. Sarah asked what was wrong, but I couldn't speak. The next day, the smell was worse. For 3 nights, I didn't sleep. The noises continued. The hammering, the sawing, the drilling, and underneath it all, the screams. On the 4th night, I called the police. The officer on the phone sounded bored. Suspicious activity? What kind? I tried to explain. The noises, the smell, the screams. We'll send a unit, he said. They never came. Or if they did, they never made it to the garage because the noises never stopped. Then came the final night. I woke to a sound that froze my blood. Not outside, not down the street, inside. The sound of a drill coming from my garage. I grabbed a baseball bat and crept downstairs. The door to the garage was shut, but light spilled out from underneath. I pressed my ear to the wood, hammering, sawing, whispers. I forced myself to open the door. My garage was empty, but the smell hit me like a wave, rot, chemicals, blood, and on the floor, in the center of the concrete, was a single object, a curtain, green, faded, the same as the house from next door, the same as the ones I'd seen before. I don't remember dropping the bat. I don't remember slamming the door shut. All I remember is lying awake the rest of the night listening to the sounds from my garage. Hammer, saw, drill, and underneath it all, the scream. I used to think apartment living was safe. You're surrounded by people, neighbors above, below, on either side. Even when you're alone in your unit, you're never really alone. Someone's always just a few feet away, separated only by a wall. That comfort turned to dread the day I realized something was on the other side of my wall, something that wasn't supposed to be there. I'd moved into the building in early spring. Old brick construction, built sometime in the 1940s but renovated enough to look decent in photos. Rent was cheap, which should have been a red flag, but I didn't care. I needed a place fast. At first it was fine. A little drafty. Pipes clanked at night, but nothing I couldn't handle. My apartment was a 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor. The only thing that bothered me slightly was how quiet it was. Too quiet. I never once saw my neighbors. Not in the hall, not on the stairs, not leaving their units. The building felt empty, but I knew someone lived next door because I could hear them. At first it was faint. A shuffle, a scrape, sometimes a cough. Always from the wall I shared with the neighboring apartment. It didn't bother me. Thin walls, old building. I told myself it was normal. But over time, the noises got stranger. It started with the scratching. Late at night, when the building was dead silent, I'd hear it. A faint, steady scrape like fingernails dragging against plaster. Sometimes it lasted minutes. Sometimes hours. Then came the whispers. I couldn't make out words, just a low murmur. Male, female? I couldn't tell. It was right at the edge of hearing, the kind of sound that made the hairs on your arms stand up. One night, I pressed my ear to the wall and froze. The whispers stopped. Then, clear as day, something whispered back. "Hello." I jumped away from the wall, heart hammering. My apartment was dead silent. The next morning, I went to the landlord. "Hey, who lives in 3B, the unit next to mine?" The landlord gave me a puzzled look. "Nobody." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "It's vacant. Been empty for months. Needed repairs after the last tenant left. Why?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. "Nothing," I muttered and walked away. That night, the scratching came back. Louder. I tried to ignore it, buried my head under the pillow. But the sound kept going, relentless, until I heard it again. "Hello." This time, it was clearer, closer, right against the wall. I didn't sleep that night. The following day, I convinced myself I had to see for myself. When the landlord wasn't around, I slipped a hairpin into the lock on 3B's door. It took me 15 minutes of fumbling, but finally the knob turned. The apartment was dark, dusty, smelled of mold and decay. I stepped inside cautiously, heart racing. It was empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no boxes, nothing. The walls, though. The walls were wrong. Deep grooves carved into the plaster, long parallel scratches running floor to ceiling. Some looked fresh. I ran my hand along one. The plaster crumbled at my touch, and then I heard it. A whisper, not from behind me, from inside the wall. I bolted, slammed the door, locked it, and swore never to go back, but the noises didn't stop, they got worse. Now it wasn't just scratching and whispers. Now it was knocking, slow, deliberate, 3 knocks, pause, every night without fail. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I couldn't focus at work. One night, out of desperation, I shouted at the wall, "What do you want?" Silence, then faintly, "Let me out." I nearly vomited. My legs gave out and I slid to the floor. That was the first night I truly considered moving out. Breaking my lease, losing the deposit, none of it mattered. I just wanted out. But before I could, things escalated again. It was 2 a.m. I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling, when I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. Breathing, slow, heavy, not muffled. Not through the wall, inside my apartment. I turned my head slowly and saw the bulge. The wall behind my dresser was moving, like something was pushing from the other side, pressing into the drywall, stretching it outward. I froze. My body refused to move. The bulge shifted higher, then lower, then stopped. I lay there all night, paralyzed, waiting for the sun to rise. The next morning, I packed a bag, called off work. I didn't care about my stuff. I just needed to leave, but when I opened my apartment door, something was taped to it, a note, in jagged, uneven handwriting. "Don't leave, we're not done." I dropped the bag and staggered back inside, shaking violently. That night, the scratching started earlier, louder, more frantic. I barricaded myself in the bedroom, every light on, clutching a knife I knew was useless. The whispers grew clearer. "Behind you." I spun around, knife raised. The wall behind me bulged. Cracks split the plaster. Dust rained down. And then, with a sickening tear, a hand pushed through. Pale. Skeletal. Fingers too long. Nails jagged and sharp. It clawed at the air, groping blindly. I screamed and slashed at it with the knife. The blade passed through like smoke. The hand withdrew. The wall sealed itself. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. The next morning I was gone. I left everything, clothes, furniture, photos. I didn't care. I drove across town, rented a motel room, and swore never to return. A week later, I went back with a moving truck and a couple of friends. Broad daylight, strength in numbers. But when we opened the apartment door, my stomach dropped. Every wall, every surface covered in scratches, thousands of them. And in the bedroom, carved deep into the plaster where the bulge had been, were 3 words, "Still inside you."